On today's show, what is the Mavericks' identity actually? And would a trade fix any of this mess? Reggie and I will get into all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. The best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, leave a 5-star review, like the video, and comment anything below. Let us know in the comment section which trade would help fix the Mavericks this year. Let me know. Curious. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the most qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And joining me from 105.3 The Fan, what you got for me, Reggie Adetula?
Cookie cakes stink. I want you to know that off top.
Big cookie cake hater, Reggie. I found that out over the weekend.
That's right.
Just not into them. Give me the quick reason you're anti cookie cake.
Apparently cookies don't scale. Like, we get to a size that big and it's not like you're getting the worst of both things, right? You're getting, usually it's bad icing. So you're getting the worst of the cake. And then the cookie is not like as good as any other cookie that you get. It's like the worst version of the cookie. It's too dense. We're doing bad things here, guys.
It's like you're doing too much, but not enough at all to bring me in.
Yeah, it's just bad.
My theory on the cookie cake is that a cookie, the best kind of cookie are like, they're like crunchy on the outside. You got the little, like, they're crispy on the outside and the inside is gooey. With a cookie cake, it's just not, you don't get crispy enough in certain areas and you don't get gooey enough in certain areas. And so it's just
solid. Yeah.
Just there. Mm-hmm. It's just there. And so the cookie cake of the Dallas Mavericks, that's where our conversation went to the other night after the Bucks game. I bet many of you had like a deep philosophical conversation after that game, because it felt like a come to Jesus moment for some, especially for some Mavs fans. The text I was getting, the comments I was seeing, I had to take the night off, so there wasn't a post game show. We'll talk about the Mavs versus Bucks game, and we'll talk about, is it system or talent in that game? Because you saw some of it work in the first quarter and then just completely get torn apart the next three quarters. And so is it about the talent disparity between the Bucks and the Mavs? About the system? We'll talk about that. I want to talk about if a trade fixes any of these problems. Stein had a couple of reports about the Mavs over the weekend, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Kuzma, PJ Washington, some of the other rumors. I think we have a good idea about what they're going to cost, and so we'll talk about that and see if any of these fix the Mavericks. And then let's start here, Reggie.
Okay.
The Mavs lose another game over the weekend. They are currently sitting in the play-in. They're in 8th place, 26-23. They were 25-24 last year through the same number of games.
Yeah.
So, and it went south last season quickly, and we saw it, and we saw how south it went for them. This team, though, is different. They're a different team. They went out and changed a bunch of players. So you can't just say, oh, it's just the same team as last year. It's not. They didn't have Kyrie at this time last season. Now, do they have Kyrie at this time this season? Not necessarily. But what is the Mavericks' identity right now? That team we watched the other night, what is this team's identity? And what is it actually?
Yeah, I was like, I think you know what my next statement is going to be. It's like, all right, what is
That's
it?
That's why I wrote that.
That's
why I wrote actually. What is the Mavs' identity actually? Not just
you were like, let me preempt Reggie and like cut out about 3 minutes of this podcast. No, it's just like there's what they might want to be, but ultimately what they are is a team that has some other stuff, and then it's like, Luka, go get us a bucket when we need it, right? Like that's ultimately what they are still when we talk about the identity of this. They're a 3-point shooting team. That's always part of it, because they don't want to clog the paint, which obviously you shouldn't when you have someone like Luka, and when Kyrie is playing, they can get downhill. And so they have some guys around the perimeter that can knock down threes, but they are not, consistent knockdown shooters. And so that's going to falter at times. And then you're just you get back to, we have a superstar. We're going to throw our superstar at you a whole bunch. And when that works, it is so damn fun. And when it doesn't, kind of tough and frustrating.
Their identity is what we haven't seen yet, to me. Like, what if they were healthy? Their identity right now is an injured team that can win some games because of the variance on the offense is what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
It's like if they can hit those threes like they did in the first quarter against the Bucks. You hit those threes, boom. you got this. Like you could win any game. But then as soon as that starts falling apart, their defense can't hold up enough because they haven't been a good defensive team. They're still not good defensive team, but they haven't been healthy enough to even see what this team is. And you hope it doesn't hold the Mavericks back in any trade discussions or moving forward. I don't think that it will. All signs point to the Mavericks know that they've got pressure on them. It actually probably motivates them more to make some kind of a move because of how tough it's been and how injured they've been and all that. They need some guarantees. This is the thing that I've been on for a while. You just need some guarantees that, some players that you're not, all right, let's hope that they grow into a bigger role. Worked out for Derrick Jones Jr., worked out for Dante Exum, then he was hurt, hasn't worked out for Grant Williams. You can't, or it hasn't worked out for Josh Green either, right? So you can't, all right, everyone, we got to hope all these guys go into a bigger role. And then you're like, all right, I hope all these guys get healthy. Kyrie, Exum, all that hasn't happened. You got to get some guarantees. And so, we think moves are happening, but their identity is also like, it's all Luka. Luka is the game plan. Like you said, Luka can get you a bucket. And I don't think it's even to the point where, all right, if we can't get anything else, then Luka can get us a bucket.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah,
it's just Luka. Like you were watching that Bucks game and all the games ever. Like Luka is shoot first. He's not pass first. You watch the difference between him and Jokic, and they're very different players.
Yeah.
Luka can be a pass first player listen, if you're from Slovenia, he can be a pass first player for sure. And he can work in a system that involves ball movement and all that. We've seen it. We've seen him, try that and play with other point guards, and he plays with Kyrie well and all that, but they just don't have the options to do that. And so he has to be this shoot first, go get a bucket. That's the first option. That is the first one, right? It's not promote everybody else and then Luka get a bucket.
And in his defense, not saying that you're like attacking him or anything, but in his defense, it does seem like even the kickouts and passing works better when he is shoot first, because you see Luka Doncic with like the late kickouts or the late,
draw attention,
cross court, and drawing. And it seems like that is even more effective in getting those guys the wide open shots that ultimately seem to help them when they do knock them down. But yeah, it absolutely is, again, a word that we have gotten really comfortable with in the basketball space, particularly as it pertains to Luka Doncic, is heliocentric, right? Like this all revolves around what Luka is capable of doing. And you said the key words. Jason Kidd said this offense, Luka Doncic is the offense, and that's for better. But then also there's instances where that's for worse.
Is that by design? Or is it because of the talent? Chicken or egg? Give me the chicken or egg, right? Is it because the Mavs don't have enough talent? With the injuries, it seems like it. With the injuries, it definitely seems like that they have to go Luka first, because who else is getting you a bucket? Even Tim Hardaway, even Hardy, Josh Green, like those are the names I just mentioned.
Yeah. The tough part about it is like if you go, hey, we're running a play for insert player here that is not Luka Doncic.
Who is it?
The fan base revolts. Talk less of like the reasonability of making that decision. Yeah, you don't have players that get into that place, so that's fair. But I think there was one time that me and you were talking, and you were talking about the idea of maybe their mindset in trying to play around Luka gives them the talent that they ultimately have, right? You're looking for certain types of players, and that shortens this talent pool even more in what you're trying to add. Not that they've done incredible in adding those types of players, but this might be a little bit of both, which of course is a little bit of a cop-out answer. But I mean, in the immediate, it's definitely like they don't have the talent to run the system.
This question lends itself to something that I was looking at over the weekend. There are 7 players in the NBA, 7 players in the NBA that average more than 25 minutes a game.
Okay.
And they score under 10 points, get under 5 rebounds, and under 3 assists a game.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
Only 7 in the whole league. The Mavs have 2 of them.
There it is. Yeah.
Josh Green and Grant Williams, both at like 26 minutes a game, and they are both basically 8 points, 3 rebounds, and like essentially 2 assists each for both of them. And Dereck Jones Jr. is at 10.1 points. So he's only out of this because he just hits that 10-point threshold there. And like you said, some of it is by design. The Mavs have designed these wings to not have this huge role, because you do have a Luka and you have a Kyrie, ideally. And a Tim Hardaway Jr. factors into that too. They take a lot of shots, so there's not a lot of production. There's not a lot of assists. They're finishing. These guys are finishing plays. But right now, they're not finishing enough plays, and the Mavs are not creating enough. And so sometimes some of it is the Mavs system lends itself to these guys not having production, but some of it is just because they're not. Like the other players on this list are not all-star player or like really good players put in bad situations. Taurean Prince, Dorian Finney-Smith is also on the list, which I found kind of ironic. Bilal Coulibaly, Isaac Okoro, Terrence Mann. Those like all the players that you would expect,
right?
Kind of in this list of the guys that run out there, but don't really bring like an elite skill necessarily to the game. It's helpful. Like all those guys can do helpful things, but what do they really bring to the table?
Yeah, and I think the clear flaw in that is, if you're building your talent in this way, you're not leaving yourself any level of upside. Because I imagine Luka Doncic, while he enjoys playing with the basketball, I imagine that he'd be willing to give up some of that for a more diverse offense that has a little bit, gives him more consistency elsewhere and all those types of things. But it seems like they have locked themselves into, and of course, some of this is understanding where you have been prior and the ways in which that stifles what you're ultimately trying to get to, right? Like there is a history here that you're working with, but yeah, it's definitely limiting in what they're able to do.
Some of this, I think, is the system, and so
yeah,
in a little while, let's talk about the system versus the talent. But before we do that, let me tell you about the trades. The trade rumors are coming up. You thought I was going listen at home. You thought I was going into an ad read right there. I was not.
Too.
I was like, all right,
what do I have to buy now?
No. I got one more thing.
Okay.
Let's talk about if a trade fixes any of this. We'll talk about some of the rumors and all that and more coming up. I had one more sentence. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Let's talk about LinkedIn Jobs. They have all kinds of job boards, and you can find all kinds of different candidates. There's so many people on LinkedIn. Raise your hand if you're on LinkedIn. I can feel all the hands being raised. Not just another job board. It's a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. Billion. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86%, very specific number, of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's like faster than some of the dating apps out there. 24 hours, you get a match with your job at that point, man. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and you might not have time or the resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Also want to tell you about BetterHelp. BetterHelp is something that helps so many people and has helped me in the past. I still go to therapy. I highly recommend it for everyone. Sometimes we just have something, we need something to get off of our chest. You've got something, you don't really want to talk to your friends about it because they always take your side. And then you're like, well, I want to think about this rationally and think through something and process something. And am I going in the right direction? Is my mindset in the right direction? If you rethink stuff like that, if you have anxiety, if there's something in your life that you keep coming back to, BetterHelp is the place for you. Check out BetterHelp and see what they have for you. They have all kinds of different therapists, people that will fit your vibe. And if you don't fit the vibe of that therapist right away, and you're like, I'm just not feeling it with this person, you can change. Therapists understand that you need to find somebody that works for you. So you can change anytime you want. Give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suitable to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show and listening today. We are a 5-day-a-week, and every post-game, unless they rip your hearts out, Dallas Mavericks podcast on here. Got Reggie on Mondays, slightly biased with me on post-games. Dana Larson joining weekly as well. All right, Reggie, let's get into this next question. Okay. Does a trade fix any of this? All the problems we just mentioned. The Mavericks' identity in and of itself is a problem. Like that, like knowing who they are and like what they are, it seems to be a problem right now. But does a trade fix any of this? Some of the rumors over the weekend. Mark Stein says that, Dallas has frequently been mentioned as a potential suitor for both Washington's Kyle Kuzma and Charlotte's PJ Washington. Two names we've talked about on this show over and over again. And the Mavericks are prioritizing power forwards over small forwards to try and address the size and defensive shortcomings. I think both those guys would help those issues in different ways. It seems like, though, that, Mark Stein had his podcast over the weekend. He talked to Jake Fisher, friend of the show as well. Stein, friend of the show, too. Both think that the Mavs would have to give up a first-round pick and one of Hardy, Green, or Omax to get Kyle Kuzma. So I think they would have to do that. And then league sources say that the Hornets have, they want to pursue Josh Green from Dallas if PJ Washington was to go to the Mavericks or anywhere, that they really want to get him. And so my question is, which of these trades would you do? Which one are you looking at going, all right, it would take the first round pick plus a Hardy, a Green, and an Omax, or Josh Green and maybe some other stuff for PJ Washington? It's an interesting conundrum.
Yeah, it is interesting, but I think I have found myself in the year of the question mark, as I feel like I have dubbed it for the Mavs, right? They have a lot of guys that are question marks, and they just continue to be question marks. Josh Green is one of those. Jaden Hardy is another one. I'm a lot more comfortable now letting go of the question mark, right? And so with that being the case, both of these are more interesting to me. And you asked earlier, I don't know if you intentionally wanted to get into this at this moment, but yeah, I think both of these help your identity in so much as either one of those players gives you a definite, I know what they are bringing. Even if I'm not going to call in like an elite skill set that's being brought to the table, Kyle Kuzma is capable of scoring the ball. And so, especially understanding Kyrie Irving, not going to show up to work sometimes. Not really like bashing him for that, but it's an understanding. It's a reality of the situation, right? If he is out, Kyle Kuzma is somebody that you can trust to give the basketball and expect him to get some points. We've seen him do it multiple occasions, right? Like that is something that is very valuable, especially when you have Tim Hardaway Jr. You know that sometimes he can do that to a high degree, but it's not a given, right? And so I think that is something where when you have that available to you, you trust that your coaching staff will then be able to say, I can trust that is there and I will use it. That is the assumption, right? I understand all the things that are happening now besides that. PJ Washington, I feel like defensively gives you a little bit something more consistent, right? And so that is something that now you can make some level of adjustments because you know that is going to be a standard. I like both of them. I imagine, and maybe this is the Nigerian immigrant in me. I'm like, oh, the cheaper option seems a little bit better, right? Like the PJ Washington
PJ for Josh Green,
right?
Whatever else they'd have to throw
right,
in.
and especially because you know that you still have work to do, right? And having if you were able to have more access to these first round picks once you get to the offseason, when maybe these deals are a little bit easier to hammer out, having a little bit more ammo to maybe put together if you need to do things seems appealing to me. And then also the idea of adding Kyle Kuzma, I understand that like he has some defense to him. For some reason, it just does not land enough with me to then add.
Have you been watching him on the Wizards? Like,
yeah, and this is the thing. I try so hard to not judge him on this because I think the Wizards have a no defense zone. I feel like as an organization, you go there and
that's the terrible name for a scheme, a no defense zone.
It is not. It's not a serious organization. And so I can't blame anybody for not playing. If you play defense, then you looked around you, you'd be like, why am I doing this? But still, like, I don't have that comfort in the idea that Kyle Kuzma comes in and gives you a significant change to your defense. So, like,
were you ever in a class in school where it was like not cool to do the homework, where everybody around you was like, did you do it? No, dude, my vocab homework, like, oh, my vocab, no, you blew it off and it just wasn't like.
I'm sorry, I was a dork and I was in advanced classes. I apologize, dog. Like those were the people I were hanging around. They were getting the work done. In fact, I was the weirdo for not doing enough. So yeah, I do not relate to the question.
Now you're slumming it over here with us.
I love it.
I didn't try that much in school, and you did. Look here we are.
Right here, same place. In fact, you're here every week, right? Or every day. I just pop in on Mondays, So I feel like you won.
That's funny. The analogy didn't land on try hard Reggie Adetula over there.
That's right. That's right. Clearly, I've shed those.
For all the slackers out there, though, if you ever been in a class where it was cool. Where it was like, oh, if you tried hard, people would look at you funny. That's defense for the Washington Wizards, it seems like. And there have been people that are saying, I even saw a couple of Locked On hosts tweeting about this, that the Wizards are the worst team in the league, and that the Pistons are taking all the heat right now because of their losing streak, but the Wizards are worse.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the Wizards, the Hornets, all of them looking at them like, hey, Detroit, thanks for losing 20 plus games in a row because nobody's ever going to think about us.
PJ Washington, I think, helps build your foundation a little bit. He's a little younger, 25 years old. He's a little cheaper, like you said, cost-wise, and then also cheaper just salary-wise across the board. He's got $16.8 million, then $15.5, then $14 million. That's cheaper than Kuzma. Starts at 25 and ends at 19 over 4 years. Kuzma's on longer. I think Kuzma, though, brings you scoring in a way. PJ obviously doesn't. He's averaging like 13 points a game. He was at like almost 16 points a game last year.
He's been on the
Hornets.
Does he have that, but then also it's a lot of it is assisted as well. So like none of this is going to happen on his own.
Yeah, PJ has scored 40 in a game though. Like he's had some moments where he comes out and you're like, oh man, there you go. Like he scored 40 a couple times in his career, and so he can get his own bucket. You don't get 40 just by finishing shots unless you're Klay Thompson on the Warriors. It's like the only way that. If I had to pick one of these right now, though, I think I'd go Kuzma. That's where I'd be. I'd be happy with either one of them, but I've been on Kuzma for a little bit because I think that he comes in. He's played with stars before too. He's played with LeBron and AD.
Yeah.
PJ has played with LaMelo Ball. It's not the same. It's not the same as playing with a LeBron or a Luka and being in big moments like that.
But I do think one interesting thing is you hear people talk about PJ Washington. They talk about him like he's a pro, right? Like
that's true. Yeah.
Like he has that mentality, and that is not to be ignored and not to be scoffed at, especially when you look at the way that this organization is. Not to say like it's not professional, but adding someone who is young but then already has that's one less thing that you have to worry about. Gonna do his work, give you what he's supposed to. And I think that matters. But I hear you on the Kuzma thing. And then also I wonder do you view this at all as why are you putting Band-Aids on a defense that is not good when we could just lean all gas, no brakes on this offensive thing?
Yeah, because if you're giving up Kuzma, I don't think that you're trading Tim Hardaway in that necessarily. It doesn't sound like why would the Wizards want him? And so now all of a sudden you're talking about Luka, Kyrie, Tim Hardaway, Kuzma. All right, now we can go all gas, no brakes. And you're not losing a ton defensively if depends on who you're giving up. If it's Hardy in a first, now you're talking, I think, at that point.
Fair enough.
Coming up, let's talk about that Bucks game, and let's talk about this Mavs team. Is it the system or is it the talent? Curious what you think about Jason Kidd. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds that you can check out for the Super Bowl, the big game. Go check out Super Bowl odds. There's a lot of things out there right now. Kicking and punting. Oh man, there's so many different things. This is one of the tabs: kicking and punting. Distance of first successful field goal, over 38.5 yards, under 38.5 yards. That one is interesting to me. Distance of shortest successful field goal, under 27.5 yards, over 27.5 yards. Will there be a fake punt or a fake field goal? Yes is plus 920. So you can get some real, if that happens and you put down like $10 on it, you can win $92. Like that's a pretty good get right there. Go to fanduel.com/lockedon and see what's available for you. You can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Again, fanduel.com/lockedon to sign up. Fanduel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Reggie, the Mavs lost to the Bucks. I was exhausted. I didn't want to talk about the Mavs anymore. And so then we went to a bar instead and I didn't do the show, and we talked about cookie cakes. That's what we did.
That's what you get. That's a good time, Reginald Adetula. A bar and some cookie cakes.
Full disclosure to the audience. That's what Reggie and I did.
Mm-hmm.
Mavs lose 129-117 to the Bucks. First quarter though, looked like it was going pretty well for the Mavs. They were up 44-20. They were knocking down their threes. You felt, all right, here we go. This Mavs team, they're taking advantage of this Bucks team. Doc Rivers still hasn't won a game as the Bucks head coach, but I was sitting there and I sent this to all the subtexters. I'm not getting fooled by the first quarter. Not getting fooled by it. It's not fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 11 times, not gonna happen. I was not fooled at all. Second quarter, they completely give it all the way back. And they were up by 20 at one point in the second quarter, and you looked at me there in the game, like, if you're the Bucks, don't you just say, like, let's just cut it to 12 by halftime? And I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's 20, 25, 12, 5, anything. This Mavs team can blow a lead at any point because, especially with the players they had in this game, their defense just can't keep them afloat. And then their offense wasn't scoring enough. And what did they cut it to at halftime? They cut it to 5.
5, aided by a little bit of Luka Doncic picking up one of these, one of those texts, which was fun to see. I don't know, where do we even go here, right? Like where do we even go from here?
Where I want to go here is with that game in mind, is the Mavs problem, especially when they're missing players. Now we'll give them. They were missing Kyrie, Lively, missing Exum. Like these are fundamental players, like starting level players to what you want to do. But thinking about this whole thing and those guys being out and everything, is the problem for the Mavericks the system or the talent? Did the Mavericks just get completely outworked by the talent with Giannis and Dame and Middleton and, Bobby Portis? Like, did they just get beat, or is it the system? Because it just doesn't seem like when the Mavs' first option of offense goes away, they have any other like things to go to.
Yeah, I mean, like it's part and parcel, but it was in this game in particular, it's more system than anything, right?
Yes.
Live by the 3, die by the 3 is making it as plain as possible, right? Like that is the most simple way of saying this. They were out here and they were knocking down threes. When the threes are going, you can see the energy up, And one of the things that they did incredibly, and I'm surprised you didn't mention this, first quarter, knocking down threes, but also defensively, they were great.
Yeah.
They were building the wall on Giannis, which is, as we understand, is like the baseline of how you have to defend him. They were doing a good job of like just packing the paint, not letting the Bucks get inside. And the Bucks just happen to be missing shots as well. Fantastic. You love to see that, right? Now, when that started loosening up, when you see the shots not go, the weak side defense is really where it started to tell. That was where I saw it, right? You could see the guy on the ball is still giving effort, but then there's a lot more gaps. There's a lot more spaces, a lot more places for backdoor cuts and all those types of things. And then, it just falls apart in that instance. And this is not a team that is talented enough to be able to play individual defense. And so you need to be able to do the system of everybody's playing, everybody's on a string, everybody recovers in the right way. And when the shots weren't going, which again points to the system offensively, this is the one way that you have, especially for other people to add in. Luka can go get his. But then when you don't have that, everything else falls apart. Yeah, that feels like a failure point that is too big in the way that you go about these things.
Jason Kidd after the game was asked about, Mavs were up 25 at one point. They ended up losing the game by a lot. And he said, I think we had some turnovers there. We had the take foul, the technical foul, our composure. We have to be better. He's talked about composure so many times, and he doesn't take any blame for their composure, like ever in this. And to me, this is the system of, all right, let the players figure it out. You can't also have like a young team, and then you can't have, play young players and have a young team and like also expect them to just figure it out. Right? It's almost as if they're playing like they're this veteran. Everybody's been around forever. They've got winners all across the board. Like they're playing like that when they don't have that roster, especially in a game like this, right? When you have Kyrie and you have, other guys that have been around for a while, that's different. But Derek Jones Jr., Grant Williams has been to titles and, he's been to a finals and all that.
Yeah.
Luka's obviously played. Tim Hardaway, though, no, not a lot of playoff experience. Josh Green, not a lot of playoff experience. Maxey has. Jaden Hardy, none. Dwight Powell, some with the Mavs. There's not like a bunch of veterans across the board where you go, all right, we can trust these guys, right? And so to me, that this loss, even though they were completely out talented, the system failed them in a lot of ways. 7 of 25 from 3 in the second half, and that's why they couldn't get anything going.
I mean, that's it, right? Like if it's all about making these threes, if there's no level of like adjustment either made or available, you do not allow yourself much room for success.
The composure part of it, though, in this game especially, the refs were not giving them it didn't feel like a fair whistle for the Mavericks. And anytime that happens, the Mavs lose it. They had the play where Luka got kicked in the stomach and the nuts in the same play, and Maxey got hooked, and they didn't call anything. They went back and reviewed it all, and they said it was incidental contact. They had all kinds of weird plays like that, and that stuff happens, and the Mavs just break down when that happens. And Jason Kidd even mentioned after the game, he said, we lost Luka there for, what was the exact? We lost Luka there for a minute, and then he came back. I mentioned that to you. It's like, it looks like they're dead, but Luka will always come back. The problem is all the other players don't join him. They stay lost. They lose it when he loses it. Yeah. How much of the composure thing is on Kidd?
I mean, a significant portion at this point, especially when you consider like, okay, the idea is you're talking to them or whatever, and I don't know, maybe they're not, maybe the message is lost on them. But the tough part about it is that's your job. Or like that, it's incumbent upon you to figure out a way to reach your team. And I've talked about the ways in which, and I think we've talked about the ways in which, okay, there might not be the guys to do this and be some level of self-starters or like a general on the floor that's going to make, get them, to that place. And so this is where I think you being the ultimate accountability on this team needs to find a way to get that done. And I understand I'm saying that as if it is easy. I'm sure it is not. But yeah, I think you pointing out the fact that never is the conversation in post games pointed back towards Kidd for himself. That ends up being a little bit, I don't know, jarring is the right word. It's like, hey, I understand they're not keeping their composure and you've challenged them. But at some point, there's got to be some level of reflection on how you go about this.
And responsibility on him. Yeah. This is the thing. I've given Jason Kidd credit for a lot of things this season. This is one thing I will never give him credit for because he doesn't think that it's part of the head coach's job. And he just...
You got to ask them. I'm just the coach.
We've seen that so many times. And okay, if your players aren't taking the reins of leadership, Remember a couple weeks ago, I asked him the question about defensive leader. He said, we're still looking for that guy. All right, if they're not going to do it, then it comes back to you. All right. And to build up those leaders and to get Luka to a point where we don't lose him every single time fouls aren't going his way, right? Like, one of the big credits of Jason Kidd is that he's supposed to be able to communicate with Luka and tell Luka things because he respects him. And, he was a player's coach and all that. You're supposed to be able to tell him the hard things. And Luka has not taken a step forward in that area. It felt like he did at the beginning of the season, and it just seems like it's gone backwards. The more he gets frustrated, the injuries have piled up. That's been a huge thing, obviously. And I'm talking about injuries to Luka himself. Like he got hurt. Yeah. He said he felt a pop in his ankle in this game, came back. Like what, no one ever questions Luka's like fight back. He fights back more than anybody. But you lose him you lose the confidence when the refs and the calls just start going the wrong way for him, and he slumps his shoulders and goes back, and he's gonna come back and get you a bucket when you need it, but you lose him.
Right, and especially when we talk about the fact that he is the offense, he is the system.
Right.
If you lose the system,
you're losing your system.
We lost the system for a few minutes there. Let's just go ahead and reboot this and get back. And now you've lost your lead, or you've found yourself down. Yeah, that's really tough. But I mean, at this point, I've tried to be like unreasonably fair in a way with Jason Kidd, understanding that it's not going to be as easy, but ultimately you got to figure something out, right? Like this is part of having the job. And honestly, if this was just a nebulous, a coach X or whatever, in a vacuum situation, could you not say in some ways that maybe they are losing the team, losing the locker room, with not seeing the message being internalized?
Say it was someone named, I don't know, Adrian Griffin. Say it was somebody with that name. Like say it could have been somebody like that.
Yeah.
Bucks made that change. Now, is it going to help them or hurt them in the end? I don't know, but we'll see what happens with it overall. This has been these games like this, I feel like when the Mavs lose like this, it's another one of those just bad losses that's on Kidd to not have this team prepared and to have other options and other things to go to. And to not just like throw your hands up and be like, well, we missed threes, it just didn't work. And Derek, he said this on what happens when threes stop falling. We missed some bunnies who normally have made there. D Jones missed a couple of dunks, and all that. And they took our best shot out there the first half and then ended up being a positive. And then it's frustrating. I'm frustrated with this.
First shot if the first haymaker doesn't land, we'll see.
That's it. And if you don't have if the first one doesn't happen for you, then what other options do you have? And the Mavs have not been, their other options have not been utilized or at least or even attempted, it seems like. So there you go. Let us know in the comment section. Would a trade fix any of this? Which trade do you think would fix any of this and help the Mavs take a step forward? We'll be back tomorrow. Slightly and I will have the Mavs versus Sixers post game. There's a lot of guys out. Joel Embiid is definitely going to be out in this game. So this becomes a winnable game for the Mavericks. So if you checked out, then get back because they'll probably win this game because this team makes no sense. So come back tomorrow. Guys, thanks for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.